Grab your pitchforks and rotten fruit. You're entering the show that encourages dangerous discussions with God's holy book. I'm your host, Ryan White, and this is Conversations with the Bible. Welcome back to Season 2 of Conversations with the Bible. We've got an action-packed show for you today. We are going to get out our trusty old Bibles. We're going to open them up, dust off the cover a little bit. Don't lie to yourself. You know it's been a little bit of time. And we're going to talk about how to destroy the Bible. Yeah, did I get your interest? I mean, honestly, I could just stop the show right here and it'd be great, right? I mean, that's a conversation starter. How to destroy the Bible. Oh, man, you know what? It's been a while. That's why we're in Season 2, not because I had this all planned out, but it's been 6 months, I think, since my last podcast. And so, hey, it's Season 2 because it was all intended, right? No, you know what? It's you got to have something to say. You got to have something to say. And there's a lot of stuff I've been studying, a lot of stuff I've been doing, but I just didn't have the stuff to say. And now I do, hopefully. Not that I have a detailed plan for the whole season, but we got some cool stuff coming up here. Today we're going to talk about how to destroy the Bible, and what I've got coming up next week, and hopefully the week after. I've actually got to make some plans with some people, but I want to do something really kind of that's been capturing my fascination, and that's talking about speaking. Public speaking. One person called it the art of the sermon, and yeah, I love that. And that's something, I got started. I'm just gonna give you a little preview here. Just bear with me. I know you're dying to wonder, like, how's he gonna destroy the Bible? We'll get to that. Okay. Little preview of what's coming up in the next week, possibly two, if I can get the other guy on that I really want to talk about, or talk not about, but talk to. Is giving a sermon what it actually, or a teaching, whatever you want to call it. If you're offended by the word sermon, get over it. It's the art of public speaking, the art of getting a message out. Because when I kind of got into this whole teaching public speaking gig, I was terrible. I had never done it before. And I didn't want to do it. And, I just had kind of one of those like Moses moments, like, Lord, I can't. I'm a man of slow speech. Not that I had a speech impediment like Moses probably did, but I just had one of those Moses moments. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this because I don't, that's one of those places where I connect with Moses and see, you know what? I see what you did there, Moses. You might have missed out on a big opportunity. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. And it's been an adventure. It's been a journey. And one of the things that I like to do is try to get better at what I'm doing. I'm not really satisfied with just sitting around and doing what I do. So I love to go in. I sometimes I'll listen to people on audio, but I really love to actually sit in and watch them. Rico Cortez has been my mentor, so I've sat in and watched him. I've sat in on a lot of the Messianic teachers while they're teaching, and don't hate me for this, but I wasn't so much listening to their message. Not that they don't have a great message, but I was really paying attention to how they delivered that message and how the audience reacted, and looking at not just the good but the bad in it. And I've picked up a lot. And so anyways, I've started looking into some other things. I realized, you know what, you can have the best information in the world, but if your delivery format is terrible, no one cares. Like, no one cares how great your information is. And so, yeah, for those of you who have something to say, who have a burning thing within you that you got to get out, but it seems like no one is listening. Maybe I can't promise you, but maybe we're going to say some things on the next two episodes that will kind of pique your interest and go, oh, hey, you know what? Maybe I can try that out because I sucked. I, I still have my first recording. I did it was actually on the Book of Ruth, which is what I've revisited this Shavuot, and I keep that recording. I don't share it online anymore because it's scary. It's terrible. And I look back at the PowerPoint and I was like, man, this is some great information, but I'm surprised like anyone watched the second video, let alone the third. Yeah, because my presentation was just not there. And I for those of you who've been with me that long, thank you for putting up with me. Thank you for being with me on this journey where I learn how to actually have something to say that people want to hear. Not that I'm trying to say that everyone wants to hear what I have to say. I mean, clearly, I just ramble. And I just put out a lot, and eventually, I find someone who likes it. Right. So, anyways, that's what we've got coming up. But today, what I want to talk about is how to destroy the Bible. Yeah. What I mean by that is that sometimes in our religious zeal, our righteous indignation for sin, our righteous indignation for people who attack the Bible, probably. Sometimes we take steps to try to defend the Bible. This is, a very popular thing, defending the Bible. And it's not something new. It's something that people have been doing for many, many years. And it's something that sometimes when we don't understand what the Bible is doing and what its purpose is, sometimes in our attempts to defend the Bible, we end up destroying the Bible. And that's what we're going to talk about today. That's a place where I've come from, and it's a place where I don't want to be anymore. And some of you might connect with this. Some of you might get offended by it. So grab your pitchforks and rotten fruit because we're going to dive right in, right? All right. So let's talk about what I'm talking about here. I was just on the road and I had an amazing, amazing time. My family, this was we just had our fifth son. Yeah, our fifth son was born in February, and that was part of the thing that was kind of pushing me off the podcast, is just because there's so much stuff to do. Like, I had four kids, and I was like, you always kind of just idealize the past. I realize, it's always like, oh, they were so great, they were so wonderful. Our kid's four now. Having another baby isn't that hard. Oops. No, I love my son. My fifth son's name is Matthias, and my wife's like, "Oh, he's actually one of the easiest kids we've had." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't remember any of this stuff." And so we took our first road trip to Texas, the Lone Star State, the place that is the opposite of Minnesota. In Minnesota, we generally stay under 30 degrees, like 6 months out of the year. They're very warm down there. We were in Houston. And so we visited in Houston. We visited New Orleans area, Baton Rouge, not New Orleans. We went to Abilene, Texas, and then we ended up at the Shavuot conference that Lion and Lamb put on in Dallas. And we had an amazing time. We met some amazing people. And along that road trip, I was talking about the book of Ruth, which, if you want to check some stuff out, that you can check it out on my website, faithofmessiah.com. Right now, I have a 1-hour kind of teaching I did beforehand, but I'm also working on getting the videos. Hopefully they turned out well. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to re-record everything. But I'm gonna get the two videos that I did at 2 hour long sessions I did at the Shavuot conference, because those just came out really fantastic. I felt really connected with the audience there about the book of Ruth, and just kind of going over some stuff. So I'm going to put those up on the website. That's faithofmessiah.com. And please check it out. Memberships are starting at $10 for the year. That's cheap. And that goes, of course, to help me with all the costs of doing all this stuff. So anyways, I was teaching on the book of Ruth, and man, Ruth is just amazing. It's amazing. I went back to it because, like I was saying, that was the first teaching I ever did, was called Shavuot, Shadows of the Kingdom, because shadows is cool, right? um, and I went back to my notes. I was like, man, this is amazing stuff. But I already did this, and while it's a lot of great information, I really want to connect more with the audience. And so I was looking at Ruth, and man, is that an amazing book. There is stuff in that book that I hadn't seen before. I hadn't put myself there. Did you know that Naomi out Job's Job? Like, Job had it bad, right? His children died, he lost all his money. Naomi's children died, her husband died, and she was a woman. And I'm not knocking on women. I'm just saying, in that day and time, being a woman without a man was tough. Like Job, at least he was a man, at least he could rebuild. In that culture, women didn't rebuild. Naomi was like left without any hope in the world. And so she's the story of immense suffering. It's brutal. And man, and that connected me with the Psalms that I've studied before. And the Psalms are brutal too. I'm telling you, man. I mean, just go on and read Psalm 88. Psalm 88. If you wanna see a brutal psalm, O Lord, the God of my salvation, I've cried out by day and in the night before you. Let my prayer come before you. Man, and then he just keeps going on. He says, verse 4, I'm reckoned among those who go down to the pit. I've become like a man without strength, forsaken among the dead, like the slain who lie in the grave, whom you remember no more, and they are cut off from the land. You have put me in the lowest pit, in the dark places, in the depths. Your wrath has rested on me, and you have afflicted me with all your waves. That's pretty brutal. And Ruth, by the way, Ruth is no less brutal. Ruth is or not Ruth, should I say, the book of Ruth, but Naomi in the book of Ruth is just vicious. She's just vicious. She's all this stuff has happened to her, and she's not like, I'm down on my luck, things haven't been going well. She says, for the hand of the Lord, Yod He Vav He, has gone forth against me. And then she gets back to Bethlehem and says, the Almighty Shaddai, the provider. Notice she uses the covenantal name and then the name Shaddai, which means provider. The Shaddai has dealt bitterly with me. I went out full, but Yod He Vav He, the Lord, has brought me back empty. Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord, Yod He Vav He, has witnessed against me, and the Almighty Shaddai has afflicted me? Like, she's blaming God. Yeah, she's blaming God for everything that happened. She's not like, God, I deserve this. She's like, dude, you forsake me. You left me. You witnessed against me. Kind of like the psalmist. You put me in the lowest pit. Your wrath has rested on me. You've removed my acquaintances from me. It's not this like, God, what have I done? How do I get this stuff back? It's like you are beating me up. Like everything's going wrong in my life, and you're the cause, Lord. When was the last time you were in church or synagogue or assembly or whatever you want to call it, and someone started praying and just let God have it? Like, God, I lost my job. You took my job from me, God, and like just let loose on God. Yeah, you'd probably would have had someone like, let's take you out back and tell you you got a life of faith is all positive. It's all roses and lilies. It's that's a horrible thing. I don't know what I'm saying here. It's something great. Whatever the flower metaphor for something great is. See, this is where I need my wife with me to be like, it's that metaphor. It's 5 in the morning. I'm up still. Yeah. So we tend to look at good religious people, should I say, have this mindset ingrained in us that like a life of faith means just taking a beating with a smile. But that's not what the Bible shows us. And this is the thing that we see over and over again. This is one of the things that's so powerful about the Bible is that it's not trying to sugarcoat life. Like it's very real, it's very raw. Bad things happen. Things don't make sense. We see the raw humanity, the viciousness of reality going on here with these things. And what happens is that we have been, unfortunately, kind of taught, if you will, if that's a good way of saying it, that we have to cover up the Bible, if you will. We have to make excuses. We have to, oh well, that's not that that's what it says there, but let's not actually do that. Let's let's put on our nice smiles and act like everything's okay, because that's no, no. The Bible acknowledges that life is bitter, that life is brutal. The Bible connects with us where we're at. It doesn't call us to live in this fantasy land where everything goes right. And the thing is that when we try to cover those things up, when we try to hide those things, we end up actually destroying the Bible. Yeah. Yeah, the Bible has some tough things in it. And we as human beings, when I say we, don't take offense to that. I'm sometimes putting myself in there and sometimes just putting people in general, people throughout history in there. Uh, we like to kind of cover up the negativity. We like to cover up the brutal reality of the Bible and make excuses for the Bible. Let me give you a great example. Okay, there's this book you might have heard of. It's called the Book of Job. The Book of Job, yeah. And in the Book of Job, it starts off with this scene in the heavens where God and the devil, Hasatan, actually in the Hebrew, Hasatan is not actually like a name, by the way. Hasatan, most of you probably know this, means the accuser. And later on, he kind of develops into the Satan, this evil angel that's kind of the head of the evil angels. But in the Bible, this term Hasatan isn't really necessarily in reference to this ultimate bad guy, if you will. And you know what? Yeah, hopefully you understand where I'm coming from here. But it's actually kind of the Satan is someone who is in God's courts, and his job is to make these accusations for whatever reason. He's subservient, if you will, to God. If it's and again, if you want to go, well, that doesn't make sense compared to. I don't know. I don't have all the answers for everything in the Bible. Maybe this is an accuser, and the one we meet later on in the New Testament is a different one. I just don't know the answer. But anyways, God's having this conversation with him, and God's kind of boasting. Hey, have you considered my servant Job? He's perfect. And so the accuser does his job, and he's like, well, he's got nothing to fear, right? And so then he goes into this like almost like a challenge or a gamble or something. It's kind of like wait a minute, God's boasting about him, and then this is what leads to him being punished. Not punished, but this is what leads to Job's suffering, is because God is having this talk with the accuser, and yeah, it's nothing that Job does, and that's kind of the point of the story. In fact, Job is never actually told. This whole scene that we see here going on in the heavens, Job is never privy to this the entire time of the story. Right? All he knows is that like everything's dying around him, and his friends are like, "You clearly have done something wrong." He's like, "Oh no," and then he's out. He's kind of asking why, and God's kind of like, "Don't worry about it, man. That's not you're not. I don't have to explain myself to you." So the whole point of the book of Job, and I think we've actually talked about this on the show before, but the whole point of the book of Job really is about struggling with, why do bad things happen to good people? Like, I've done nothing wrong, Lord. Why did calamity strike? Um, and the point is that it's not necessarily because you sinned, because that was one of the things his friends were like, dude, you must have sinned. And the whole point of the story, or one of the points, right? I don't want to say the whole point. At one level, the point of the story is that no, he didn't sin. Like, he did nothing wrong to deserve this. This is all happening because God was boasting to the accuser about him. Now, what does that have to do with destroying the Bible? It's this. It's that this story, written, I mean, it seems like possibly he's like a contemporary of Abraham. As far as when the story was written down, I don't know. I have a sneaking suspicion it was written down a lot later. How we came to know the story, I don't know. But anyways, it was written well before the time of the New Testament. And then about 1400 years later, there was a Jewish rabbi, Kabbalist, who decided, oh, well, there's this book in the Bible that's mentioned called the Book of Jasher. And so since we don't have the Book of Jasher, I'm going to write the Book of Jasher. Not trying to deceive people. This is kind of how they did Midrash in that time. And so he wrote what's called the Book of Jasher today. And these books of Jasher, sorry to break this to you, but this Book of Jasher that has become popular and is being sold is not actually the Book of Jasher from the time of Moses. That's not a disputed fact. It's not disputed. That's a very clear fact, especially when you look at a lot of the writing and stuff like that. I mean, it's talking about like medieval French or medieval European names and stuff like that. But beyond the point, the point is that the Book of Jasher does something with Job. Even though it's not covering the book of Job, it inserts Job into the Torah. And Job is one of the people who gives advice to Pharaoh about killing the Israelite babies. What this author did is destroy the Bible. What he's doing here is destroying the Bible. He is basically inserting this little story in and saying, you know what, we've got the book of Job, which has been a mystery, and now we're going to solve that mystery by saying, you know what, actually, Job was getting what he deserved because he's the one who advised Pharaoh to kill all the Israelite babies. Sorry, no, that's not the point of the book of Job. In fact, that's the exact opposite of the point of Job. The exact opposite point the book of Job is trying to make. The book of Job is trying to say it's not up to you to understand. And if anything, it has nothing to do with your sin. Job didn't sin. And to then write a story to make these conjectures, well, he must have sinned, is to destroy the whole point. Yeshua dealt with this exact same mindset. If you look at the story in John chapter 9, John chapter 9, Yeshua is passing by and he sees a man who's blind from birth. And listen to what his disciples ask him. They said, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he would be born blind? See, they didn't get it. They missed the point of Job because in that worldview, in that perspective, their thought was, if you're suffering, you must have done something wrong. If you're suffering, you must have done something wrong. But Yeshua answers them and says, look, neither this man nor his parents. He was born this way so that the works of God might be displayed in him. The point being that Yeshua is making here is the same thing as the book of Job. Not just because you're suffering doesn't mean that you've sinned. God's not this mean bully up there that as soon as you mess up, he punishes you, but as long as you're not messing up, he's just going to pour out his blessings on you. That's not how life actually works, and that's not what the Bible is trying to tell us. In fact, if that was the case, why was Yeshua rejected? Why was Yeshua crucified? I mean, in their mindset, if God allowed him to be crucified, clearly God approved of what they were doing. But that's not what the Bible teaches. In fact, the Bible teaches a lot of times suffering is actually caused by other wicked people. And that if you're suffering, it's not because you necessarily did something wrong, but it could now, obviously, there are times you're suffering because you did something wrong. I mean, if you have lung cancer because you smoked all your life, there's a clear cause and effect there. But there's so many complicated cases. I was just recording a gospel cycle video for the website, and I was reading the story in Luke chapter 7 of this woman who's a sinner, and it struck me, this Pharisee is just, he's like, how could Yeshua allow this woman who is a sinner to touch him? Clearly he's not a prophet. But why is she a sinner? What made her a sinner? We don't know for sure about this woman in particular, but many of the women in that day and age who were thought to be sinners were called that because they were prostitutes. Now, that's a very not good act. That's a sin to be a prostitute. But let me ask you the question: how many little girls think, "Oh, you know what? Yay! When I grow up, I want to be a prostitute." I mean, I'm sure there's some people who make that choice, and clearly that's not okay. But in that world, being a prostitute was a very shameful profession. Women who were prostitutes weren't prostitutes because that was their lifelong dream of doing that. They were prostitutes because either their husband had died or he had divorced them without leaving them any sufficient means to provide for themselves. And in that culture, women didn't have the ability to make money outside of prostitution. Generally, there were a couple other options sometimes, but when it comes down to it, Most women who are prostitutes even today aren't doing it because of their choice. They're, because that's what their lifelong dream was. It's because they're hungry, and they're going to die unless, and this is their only option to provide that for themselves, or obviously the sex slave trade. But in a sense, it's almost the same way when you're kicking someone out and saying, get out of my house and I'm not going to provide you with anything, and you're forcing them into starvation. In a sense, in a very real sense, you're forcing them into prostitution, because that's the only way they're going to be able to fill their bellies. Now, of course, good religious people say, well, they should just trust in the Lord. Um, put yourself in their shoes, though. I mean, who are we to say that we wouldn't go into some desperate circumstances in order to feed ourselves, or especially if you had a little child? This was one of those things with the book of Ruth. Elimelech and Naomi, they went down to Moab, and the Moabites were Israel's bitter enemy. In fact, in the Torah it says, never make peace with them. Don't let these pigs into your congregation. Don't make peace with them. And yet there's this famine, and Elimelech and Naomi take their two sons and they head down to Moab. Were they wrong for doing that? Clearly that's not ideal, and clearly, well, they should have gone somewhere else. They should have just trusted in the Lord. God would provide for them. Maybe, but you know what? Have you ever looked at your child and been able to count their ribs, and they're crying incessantly with their last bit of strength, saying, I'm hungry, I'm hungry? Would you not yourself go to some drastic measures in order to feed your own child? Yeah. And so this woman who's a sinner, it's very likely that she's a prostitute. And the thing is that her being a prostitute probably wasn't her life goal. It probably wasn't really her choice so much as her only option. And now that she's turned that life to provide for herself, she's probably making a good living, and maybe she's made enough that she could stop doing it. But at that point, she's already lived through the shame. She's already an outcast. She's already marked as a sinner, and so she's probably going to keep on doing that until this rabbi comes around and offers her forgiveness. Because you see, in the rabbinical model, in the rabbinical understanding of who God is, uh, you don't just get forgiveness. You got to make penance. You got to make amends for what you've done. And if you called John a bad name, you can do that. But how do you make amends for years of prostitution? You get to a point where religious people are telling you, yeah, you can't. You've done too much. You need to be put to death, if anything. And that's not really an option for you. I mean, how many of you, when you came to Torah, if they would have said, well, okay, yeah, you can come in, but what have you done in the past? Oh, you've committed adultery? Well, you can come to Torah, but we're gonna have to put you to death. Like, there's no forgiveness for that. I mean, would you really be like, okay, well, kill me as long as I have Torah? No, you would have been like, no, I don't want that. Right? And so Yeshua comes in and offers her this thing, this forgiveness, this wiping clean of the slate without having to make these amends that are impossible for her to make. And she jumps on that chance, and she reciprocates there. I had a great time recording it. Please, if you get a chance, check it out. It's called the Gospel of Luke 7-8, Anointed Feet. And anyways, the point I was trying to make here is that she is probably a prostitute because she couldn't provide for herself. And the number one reason why women couldn't provide for themselves, either their husband died, or more likely scenario, she was divorced. And if you look in the Mishnah at the laws of in I can't remember the exact section off the top of my head right now. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but again, I've had teachings on this in the past. But in the Mishnah, the house of Hillel and house of Shammai had this debate over what is adultery and what constitute grounds of divorce. And you could be, as a woman, you could be divorced for burning the bread. You could be divorced if there was a prettier woman than you. If you uncovered your hair in public, if you were seen talking to a man, not your husband, in public. In fact, they weren't even really supposed to even talk to their husbands in public. Those could be grounds for divorce, which is not in the Torah. And so you see, it's possible, there is a scenario of possibility that this woman was divorced because of rules that the Pharisees had invented based on a Torah commandment in order to live out the wickedness that was in their heart. Oh, we're following Torah, but they were doing what was right in their own eyes, using the Torah as an excuse to divorce their wives. That's a fact that people were doing that. I don't know that that's what happened to this woman, but it's possible. If it not this woman, other women who were driven out of their homes without any sort of legal protection, without any sort of provision, because of these rules that had been invented for divorce. And so it's very possible that this woman actually, the root cause for her being a prostitute was in fact Simon himself. And so we see the ugliness and the brutality in the Bible of what people are doing to other people. And rather than making excuses, I'd propose that we need to embrace that humanity, embrace that reality. Don't cover it up, because it's there. It's in our world, and it's within us. Hopefully we're not doing things as wicked, but we have that potential. We have I don't know if you've ever talked to people who do bad things, but most people that do bad things don't think they're doing anything wrong. I've talked to people who have been physically abusive to their wives, and it was her fault, according to them. And they even had Bible verses. I'm not kidding you, Bible verses to back up why she deserved that beating that she got. Is that really what the Bible's about? Using it that way? No. And so we have an amazing potential to take the Bible and turn it and to weaponize it, to turn it into a system of abuse. And that's actually what we see in the Bible. That's what we see is people using things in the Bible and weaponizing them. There's also conflicts in the Bible. When I was at during the Shavuot meeting, the Shavuot conference, Monty Judah got up there, and it's something that I've embraced before, but I'd never heard it put in such a way, and I just loved how he said this. He said, "I don't believe in the Bible, I believe in the Lord." Now don't get your pitchforks out yet and go after me or Monty here. Hear me out. I don't believe in the Bible, I believe in the Lord. You see, none of us have the Bible figured out. And the more you study, the more you're going to find things that you just can't reconcile. There's little things here and there that are just, you got to put them on the shelf. That's what I've learned to do. You just put it on the shelf. And the thing is that God's not going to, have a test for you at the end of time and say, hey, if you want to get into heaven, you got to get an 80 or above on this Bible quiz I'm going to give you, or this history exam I'm going to give you. It's about having a relationship with the Lord. It's about trusting in Him. We see oftentimes in the Bible, trust in the Lord. We don't see trust in the Bible written anywhere, and that doesn't mean that we don't try. That we don't believe what the Bible says. What I'm saying here is that we don't let it hammer our faith, and when things don't make sense, we start by not letting it beat us down and think that we've lost all faith. And what happens there is we tend to get angry and we tend to stick our head in the sand. As we learn and grow, and this is one of the things that I've done, we learn to kind of embrace actually the conflicts there, and realize that sometimes they're actually put there for a reason. Let me give you an example. Proverbs chapter 26, verse 4 and 5. Do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you will also be like him. Verse 5. Answer a fool according to his folly, that he may not be wise in his own eyes. So which is it? Should you answer a fool according to his folly, or should you not answer a fool according to his folly? Yeah, that's two conflicting pieces of advice, and they're not on opposite ends of Scripture. They're literally one after the other. One after the other. And that's the thing. That's where reading and what's called wisdom comes into play. There's going to be things that show conflict, and rather than getting scared and going, oh, wait, those two things don't match up, we should get excited and go, where's the message here? I'm ready to dig in. There's something really cool going on here, and I want to dig in. This was a pretty easy example from Proverbs. Should you answer a fool or not answer a fool? Yes. Yes. It depends on the situation, and the Bible isn't giving us a one answer fits every single situation sort of advice. The Bible gives us these guidelines, these rules, these laws, but the thing is that those laws don't fit every single scenario. Sometimes they're perfect, sometimes they're great, but sometimes there's more going on behind the surface. The law against prostitution, yeah, that's pretty set in stone, but maybe there's something going on behind the surface. What's going on that Yeshua forgave a prostitute and comes down so harshly on this Pharisee? Sometimes there's something going on behind the scenes. Maybe this woman didn't actually want to be a prostitute. Maybe she was kind of forced into that. Let me give you another example of prostitution actually being righteous. Ooh, did I say that? Ooh, I shouldn't have. Oh, wait, I did. Yeah, because the Bible says so. Yeah. Genesis chapter 38. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that you should go out and be a prostitute, or that, if you are a prostitute, that you should stay in that lifestyle because it's righteous. No, by no means. What I'm saying is that in Genesis chapter 38, Judah was supposed to provide an heir to Tamar, to raise up the name of his deceased son, and to also provide for her. And he doesn't. And so Tamar dresses up like a prostitute, seduces him, and has relations with him. And long story short, he finds out what she did. And he says, and I'm not kidding you, literally in the Hebrew, he says, she is more righteous than I am. She is more righteous. This woman dressed up like a prostitute, seduced her own father-in-law. Yeah, Find me in the Torah where that's okay. Find me in the Torah where that is the model of righteousness. This is why it's so important that we not only study the laws, but we study the stories as well. We study the narratives. When you study that law, study the narratives associated with it. Why? Because there's something there. It's not a one size fits all law. There now, this doesn't mean that we make excuses. Well, Tamar, she acted like she actually was a prostitute towards her father, so I should do that. No, by no means. But the point here is that the Bible's not as black and white as we've been raised to think, and that's actually a good thing. That's actually an exciting thing, because there's something bigger going on here. And the thing is that the Bible is embracing humanity. I'm going to use that phrase again. Why? Because life is not simple. Life is so complicated. It's so complicated. And the thing is that when and hopefully you've experienced this, because it's good to have this experience. Hopefully you've experienced this where you had something go wrong and you turn to the Bible for help and you're like, man, nothing fits what's going on here. Like, this kind of does, but if I do that, that's horrible. What do I do? What do I do? Because the thing is that life is messy, and we're oftentimes confronted with situations that do not have a good outcome no matter which way we turn. There's no perfect answer. How should this have been taken care of? Judah's refusing to do his duty. What was Tamar supposed to do? Or think about the situation where uh, with Jacob and his daughter Dinah, right? She's seduced, possibly raped, probably more like statutory rape, but it was probably consensual, but she didn't have the right to consent. And now what's he going to do? I mean, sure, he could kill this guy who did this, like what ends up actually happening, but what's that going to do for his daughter? Now, because she has been, she's had lain with a man, no one's going to want to marry her in that culture. She's going to live the rest of her life without a man in her life. Her parents are going to take care of her for the rest of her life. It's an impossible situation. It's a terrible situation. And rather than focusing in on getting revenge, on figuring out why something happened and beating up that cause, sometimes the only thing to do is to move forward and do what's best for that person. And sometimes that requires you to break one law in order to keep another law. That's what Tamar did. That may sound, you're treading on thin ice there, buddy. Hey, I'm from Minnesota. All our ice is thick. We're below zero most of the year. Come on, man. Yeah. The thing is that's Tamar basically had to choose which is worse, dressing up as a prostitute and seducing my father-in-law, or not providing an heir for my deceased husband and not having anyone to provide for me. And as strange as it sounds, Judah recognized that and says, wow, she's more righteous than I am. She understands the weightier matters of the law. Yeah. Let me give you one more example of things that don't make sense, because this was something that I was teaching about. Ruth, again. Let's talk about Ruth herself, though. Ruth, over and over and over in the story, as if the author wants to make sure you don't miss it, she's called Ruth the Moabite. Ruth the Moabite. Ruth the Moabite. That woman from Moab. Yeah. Okay, why in the world is the author saying this over and over again? Well, there's one reason, because she's a Moabite. And what's significant about that? Okay, well, the Moabites were a group of people who came into being through the incestuous relationship between Lot and his daughters. And then they refused hospitality along the way. And then they sent their women at the behest of Balaam to seduce Israel and brought a huge plague on them. And so in Deuteronomy it says, "You will never let these people in, not till the 10th, up through the 10th generation. By any means will you let a Moabite enter the congregation." And this woman's like 2 or 3 generations later. Yeah, Ruth is. And so I'd done the teaching, and I'm like, look, the thing is that the author is intentionally showing us something. She's illegal according to the Torah. She's and she's immigrating to Israel. She's what we might call an illegal immigrant or an illegal alien. And the author of Ruth is trying to make that point. He's trying to show, look, you guys are scared of these people. You think that they're going to lead you astray. I mean, that's what Nehemiah and Ezra, that's what we read about. Hey, put these foreign Moabites away. They're gonna lead you astray. You guys are scared of them. But look at how great Ruth was. I mean, she has this absolute love for her mother-in-law. She gives up everything to take care of her mother-in-law. She rejects her land, and this is something important, right? I mean, illegal immigrant, but she's rejecting her land, she's rejecting her gods. Yeah, but look at this woman that you feared ended up actually being the what, grandmother or great grandmother of King David. And for us, we recognize, yeah, she's actually in the, had she not come to that land, we may never have had a King David. We may never have had Yeshua through that. Now, obviously God would find a way, but you get what I'm saying. The whole point of the story here is this thing that you think doesn't belong actually was the catalyst for one of the greatest people in all of Israel. And so after I get done doing this teaching, someone comes in and asks me, and this is nothing against them or against the person, whoever the person is who teaches this. It's just that this is how we've been trained to think, unfortunately. She said, have you heard this teaching that they can prove that Ruth actually wasn't a Moabite? And I'm like, that's destroying the Bible. That's destroying the whole point of the story. The whole point was that she was a Moabite. If she wasn't a Moabite, why would the author over and over and over again? Why would he grind it in that she was a Moabite? And you notice, by the way, giving away a little secret here, the last time he mentions her name, she's no longer Ruth the Moabite. She's just Ruth. It's actually a story about someone going from being a Moabite to someone who becomes an Israelite. And that's the beauty of the story. But if we take that away, her being a Moabite, we're destroying the Bible. We're destroying the story. So I'm going to close up here. I'm just going to challenge you guys. Think about when you get to those things where someone's challenging the Bible and you think, oh, well, they're trying to say the Bible can't be inspired. The Bible can't be true because this and this don't match up. Maybe they're not supposed to. Maybe that's the point. Maybe there's something really cool there that you can dig in and find. At the least, our faith our trust isn't in the Bible, it's in the Lord. The Bible's amazing, but the Bible is often a mystery. And in fact, I love it more and I study it more and I find it even more edifying because there are things in there that I can't explain. Why in the world would they include four different versions of the gospel message? Why not just make one? I mean, how many of you would love to have a chronological gospel? No offense to anyone who's ever done this, but they tried that. Not in the last 100 years. I'm talking they tried that in the 2nd or 3rd century AD. It was called like the Diatessaron or something like that. You can look it up. And someone came in and they took all four gospels and they turned them into one gospel. And the thing is that people did not find it inspired. They found the Spirit of God to be hovering over four accounts, even with those places where you're like, wait a minute, it said this here and it said this here, and it doesn't make any sense. Rather than making excuses, rather than trying to find loopholes around, maybe we should embrace it. Maybe we should accept the humanity of our scriptures and rejoice in it and think, wow, this is a God that I serve who actually connects with me and my messy life. You see, it was the Hellenes, the Greeks. What they did is they took their stories and they prettied them all up. They made it so that their heroes were flawless and everything was perfect. In fact, that's where the book of Jubilees came from, was an attempt to Hellenize the Torah, an attempt to kind of cover over all those all too human mistakes that our heroes did. But that's destroying the Bible. That's taking away the Hebraic perspective. I'm going to throw that word out there. That's throwing out that inspired Hebrew way of telling the story, where rather than hiding the flaws in the people, you embrace them and you celebrate them and you say, yeah, Abraham was my father, and Abraham tried to pass off his wife as his sister because he was scared out of his mind. And you know what? I can connect with that. I haven't done that, and hopefully I never will. But man, I can connect with being scared and making some dumb choices when you're scared. Yeah. Yeah. That's what the Bible's about, is God reaching out to people who aren't perfect, who make mistakes. And could I propose to you, that's where some of these things in the Bible that don't make sense to us, maybe that's the point of them, is that it's showing us that connection with God, with humanity. Because that's the God that I serve. That's the God that I love. That's the Messiah who I want to be my king in my heart and on this earth forever and ever, is the one who became fully human, the one who sweated blood, the one who said, Father, take this cup from me, the one who was hanging on a cross and said, God, where are you? I don't feel your presence with me. I feel so abandoned. That is a God who comes down and meets us where we're at in order to lead us up. Amen? And that's why I have made the commitment to no longer destroy the Bible for myself. Maybe it makes people, if it makes you happy, if that's what you love, that's how you connect with God. Hey, that's great. We're here having a conversation. This isn't me telling you what to do. Anyways, right? But man, for me, I have found so much freedom and so much actual enjoyment in the Bible just by saying, you know what? That doesn't make sense, and that's great. Let's dig in and let's see what the Bible actually has to say. Amen? we are going to call it quits here. I hope you've enjoyed this. Hey guys, don't forget to check out the website faithandmessiah.com. If you're going to be in some of the places that we're going to be teaching, please come and join us. We're going to be in August. We're going to be in Indiana near Fort Worth, and I'm going to be in northern side of Atlanta later on in August, actually on my birthday. Sukkot in Oklahoma, Temple Conference in January. Yeah, join us there. You can check out my schedule on the website faithandmessiah.com. So I pray that the Father blesses you and keeps you, and I pray that if you're someone who's struggling and hurting, that this message especially connects with you, and you see that the Bible is written for you in your humanity, in your darkest hour, that it's there to show you there's other people who've done it. There's other people who've been there with you, and there's a God who loves you no matter what. Amen. Shalom, my friends.